Welcome everyone to day 2 of Shopify Unite. Thank you so much for coming. How's everyone feeling? Yeah? Great. So let's get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can add them to the event app. Open the Unite app, select Q&A module, use event code UNITE, select track 2 for scaling, and then you can submit your questions. I grew up in a small town called Goderich, Ontario. Pretty close to here, actually. I grew up with 3 brothers, and all we wanted was a dog. Now, we couldn't have a dog because my mom is allergic to basically everything, so no dogs for the Lambert children. One year for my birthday, I received the best present a 10-year-old could ask for, other than a dog, of course, which was 2 fish. I named them Dina and Claire, and they were my best friends. I was obsessed with them. I told them my secrets. I loved them so much, I quickly wanted to add to the family. One day, I was walking home from school, and I rushed into the pet store. I picked out the coolest looking fish, named him Gary, ran back home, dumped him in the fish tank, and 1 week later, Dina was dead. And Gary was not doing well. When I took Gary back to the pet store, I learned that the conditions in my tank were killing him, and the dynamic between Gary and Dina had been toxic. I learned a valuable lesson that day about rushing into important decisions. See, a fish tank is just a collection of fish, and a company is a collection of people. Adding another person to your team is a big decision, which is why I suggest you consider designing instead of staffing your teams. Design is intentional, purposeful, strategic, and creative, and those elements should all be present in how you grow your companies. I joined Shopify when we were 40 employees, no recruiters, and helped to grow the team to well over 3,000 people. My team, the talent acquisition team, has experienced a huge amount of scale. And despite these large numbers of candidates and interviews and events, we are constantly on the mission to find the best people for the right roles at the right time. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm looking to add 1 person to my team this year, maybe 3, 10. For some of you, maybe it's 50. Certainly not 1,000, and possibly you don't have a huge budget for hiring. So how will this help me? Well, as you can imagine, we've experienced a lot along the way. We've found huge success and made a ton of mistakes. So what I've done is I've boiled it all down to what I call the talent top 5 to save you time, whether you're adding 1 or 100 people to your team this year. Number 1, pump up the volume. You need to meet many people to get the context on who is right, or else you'll be making your decision in a vacuum. When I bring a candidate to our executive team, to Brittany or Toby or Harley, and they only have 1 person to compare them to, they typically encourage me and my team to go back to find more people to compare to know that they're getting the best available talent. And I know that could add to the time it takes to find somebody, but at Shopify, we value quality and search rigor over speed. You will likely think someone is better than they actually are if you only have them to compare to. Like my first car, for example. I test drove one, bought it, and as it turns out, the Hyundai Accent is not the best car on the planet. You will likely meet people who are not right for your role, and that will even help to inform your decision about who could be right. And meeting more people will also make you better at interviewing. And don't just hire your friends and warm referrals, your known referrals. Include them in the process, but compare them to a number of other people who bring different experiences and perspectives. Open the aperture of the candidate pool. Diversity will make your company stronger and your environment better. And diversity is not just about hiring women because it's the right thing to do, although that definitely is true. It is about building a team that understands your diverse customer base. Shopify has over 600,000 merchants in 175 different countries, and you are the incredible group of people who help them succeed. Go outside of your existing circles and connect with people who bring inherent dimensions of diversity, such as race, gender, and age, and acquired dimensions like industry experience and languages spoken. Expand your network and encourage your teams to do the same. Is your Twitter feed an echo chamber of your own beliefs? Are the meetups you're attending filled with people who are all very similar? Broaden your scope. When writing a job description, are the requirements actual requirements of the job? We know that underrepresented groups are likely to self-select out if they don't meet all of the criteria. And look around at your existing teams. Does everybody think similarly? Do they have the same, maybe, haircut or look the same? If so, maybe it's time to add a different perspective. Your environment, your products, and your services get better when the team building them can test them from different angles, just like your diverse customer base will. Number 2, don't treat people like shit. Sounds very obvious in theory, but how many job interviews have you truly enjoyed? I suspect not a lot. So things like getting back to candidates makes a big deal. Behind every resume and every cover letter is a human being. And I know, emailing candidates to let them know that they've been unsuccessful is likely the last thing that you want to be doing, but it will set you apart and position yourself as a great employer. People talk, and if it was positive, they may even refer great talent your way, and they may even apply in the future. At Shopify, we have hired hundreds of people who at one point in time were rejected. Another way to set yourself apart is through the interview itself. Don't try to make candidates feel uncomfortable. Interviewing is stressful enough, and you don't need to increase that by creating an environment where they feel they are being tricked. When you're evaluating candidates, the interview should reflect what they will actually do day to day, and not some imaginary scenario that they will never encounter. So instead of asking how many golf balls could fit into a 747, perhaps ask a developer to review some public code, a designer to create some designs or show you some of their design work, and a writer to write something. Which brings me to my third point. Interviewing needs to be enjoyable for both the interviewer and the person being interviewed. The goal is to get people to open up, which they will not if they feel they're being interrogated. One of the first steps in our process is called the life story, where a candidate starts from a point of time in the past of their choice, like their first job, what they wanted to be when they grow up, or high school, and they work their way through up until today. They share as much or as little as they like, and in addition to their skills, we are equally interested in their values, their passions, and their potential. The characteristics we believe are successful at Shopify are being impact-driven, engaged, authentic, and self-aware. Yours will be different, and they should transcend the dimensions of diversity like the ones I mentioned earlier, and you should be intentional about choosing them. The role needs to make sense for the candidate too. A few years ago, I interviewed someone who had all of the skills, experience, and potential that we were looking for. During the life story, I learned that the candidate was incredibly passionate about space, and specifically satellites. I called them to offer them the job, and I told them it made a lot of sense for us. But I was concerned that perhaps this wasn't the best career move for them based on their true passions and goals. They were very surprised, thought about it, and ultimately took my advice and rejected our offer. 3 months later, I received an email that they had pursued their passion and landed their dream job working on problems in space technology. We ended up finding someone who was equally skilled and incredibly passionate about commerce. She's still here today doing her life's work with us. It needs to make sense for the candidate too. The past predicts the future. While pump up the volume was a tactic, the past predicts the future is a belief. A recruitment process is about collecting as much information as possible to make an informed decision about whether or not a candidate will be successful in your environment. You can never be 100% certain, but you can mitigate risks by understanding their past experience, engagement, decisions, and trends over time. For example, if the person describes all of their past managers as incompetent, they will likely seek out incompetence in you and your teams. Conversely, if they've left every place they've ever worked better than when they found it, they will likely have that impact in your environment. They are the common denominator. And don't get me wrong, great candidates will have had negative experiences too, but it's how they reflect on those experiences that is an indicator of how they will show up for you. Number 5, play for keeps. Take your time hiring and mitigate risks. Too many small companies interview very few people and then make a hiring decision that if it doesn't work out, they can always just fire them later. I caution against this approach. The damage a bad hire can make, especially when you're small, outweighs the risks adding time conducting a proper search. Keep in mind, this is really hard, but like the craft that brought you all here today, the more you learn and experiment with great hiring practices, the easier and faster it will be. Not to mention, it's actually really fun. So I know what you're all wondering. What happened to Claire? So my third fish, Claire, also passed away. And I had given up fish tanks. I'd written off fish tanks forever. Until I went over to my friend Ellen's house one day. And she had assembled over time the mother of all fish tanks. There were plants and snails, plecos, neon tetras, guppies and their little babies. It was a thriving, beautiful, healthy, and diverse ecosystem. Not by luck, but by design. Speaking of thriving ecosystems, today we are lucky enough to be able to dive into the experiences of 3 Shopify partners, all at different stages of growth. Please welcome to the stage John, Djuro, and Bronwyn. Come on up. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. So let's get started with some quick introductions. John, why don't you start?
Hi, I'm John Murphy. I'm the CEO of Wolfpoint Agency. We're a Shopify Plus partner based out of New York City. We do a full spectrum offering, design, front-end, back-end development, platform migrations, back-end integrations, and a suite of digital marketing services. We've had a really explosive year of growth. We hired 22 people last year, bringing the team up to 30, and we expect this year is going to be just as crazy. We're going to hire just as many people, so hopefully I can give some advice for people in similar scenarios and learn from the mistakes that I made, because it's been a tough road so far.
Thank you. Djuro?
Morning, everyone. My name is Djuro Selec. You may call me Djuro. I am a designer and co-founder at Squirrel. We develop Shopify apps for Shopify merchants. And so far, we have 5 apps out, and the 6th one in the works. We've been at it since late 2015. And my co-founder Dom and I only came on board full-time last year, January. We're a small team of 5 people, all remote, all distributed. The 2 of us co-founders are in London, and we have 5 employees around the world: New Zealand, Luxembourg, and Bangladesh.
Thank you. Bronwyn?
Hi, I am Bronwyn, and I am the owner and creative director at Cinnamon Toast. We're located in Hamilton and Ottawa, Ontario. We are a team of 15, and we started primarily as a design firm. That was really my background and really where I wanted to be. And then about 5 years ago, we transitioned into being a full-service agency, and that's when we started to dive into more websites and naturally Shopify.
Woo! So I know a lot of people ask me this question, and I think everyone will be curious for all of your answers. To grow or not to grow? When do you know when is it the right time to add a new person to your team?
For sure. I think that in the beginning, for me at least, you get a big client and all of a sudden, I gotta hire. And as we've grown, I've really realized to reflect better on my current staff as well as the processes in place. So is my team performing at 110%? Am I giving the tools that they need to succeed? And are our processes in place? I think some of the biggest things that we lack are our process, and sometimes we can speed those up, eliminate unneeded things, and all of a sudden, you might not need 3 new hires, you might need 2 new hires. And I think that I always rushed into hiring someone, I need someone, rather than reflecting on that kind of quality improvement of my current team. And that's where I'm at right now. And it's really changed my mindset of how do I really give my current team the tools to succeed rather than just running out and hiring. And I'm not saying I'm not going to hire, but it's just that self-reflective. And I think it's really helped better our team.
So the solution is not to always hire, but to evaluate your internal team and then make a decision about who could be best to bring on.
Yeah, or maybe move someone into a different role and then hire for that. And we're currently doing that where we have a front-end developer that's interested in moving to being more fully stacked. And rather than hiring a back-end developer, it makes more sense to train him and move him along and then hire a different role. So I think that's kind of, you always have to look internally and then look externally. And that's really helped us change our mindset.
That's great. Djuro, you've added a couple folks to your team recently.
Yes, we added 2 more developers. I'm now outnumbered by 3 developers and 1 designer. But we are very cautious about growing, and what we find, it's completely different than agencies. So we are a SaaS company, and we have this luxury of not having really any external deadlines, only those we impose upon ourselves. So we can really choose the time when to grow, and we mostly do it when there's something in our process that would really require someone else's full attention, as opposed to our scattered one. So we usually hire in between, let's say, 2 projects, and it's been good for us so far, yeah.
Okay, great. So the timing's really key for you.
Yeah, we can stay consciously small as long as we're comfortable with.
That's great. And John, you take a bit of a different approach.
Yeah, more out of necessity, really. Just since the growth has been so explosive over this last year, we used to have a practice where we were really hiring just to meet the new projects we were coming on, but business has been very consistent, growing at a fast pace, so we've just adopted this always looking strategy for key positions. There are certain ones that we're obviously not hiring for at every moment, but project managers in particular, I will hire any qualified project manager at the time. That goes for anyone in the audience, anyone with agency experience, come meet me after the show. I will interview you right here. But yeah, we've just had to always look now, and we expanded how long our hiring process is taking. So it's a constant flow, constant process, and when a good person comes along, I don't turn it down. I just kind of trust that the next job's going to come along, and we can keep up with it. So it's a good strategy.
Okay.
It's worked out well.
That's great. And other than on stage at conferences, how would people know that you're hiring? What's the discovery kind of stage like for you?
Well, the main acquisition tool is on stage at conferences, obviously, but no. We've got 3 main pools. One, really the job boards that I think is our biggest source of volume for potential candidates. We always have postings on our career page on our site.
You have a career site.
Yeah, we've got a career page on our site that keeps our more constant positions. Right now, we've got 12 open recs across a bunch of different boards, as well as one that I didn't really expect would be one, but has turned to be relatively consistent, is our Shopify experts page. Even though it's for people to find, merchants to find us, so many people just randomly submit resumes through there. And those are the people that are seeking us out personally. So they tend to be pretty qualified, and they're interested in us specifically. So we found a couple good candidates there.
That's great. In places you may not expect candidates to come. And Djuro, what about you?
So we also post the main listing on our website, but of course then we go and post it online on different marketplaces depending on the on the position we're trying to fill. So for example, for the customer service, we posted on Upwork, Odesk, those kinds of similar to Elance. And when we looked at like what should be post, we actually looked at Shopify's listing for when they look for Shopify gurus, because that was the exact person we needed. And we really ended up with, so we copied the Shopify's tests, kind of like install Shopify, make a store. We kind of copied that, adapted it to our company shamelessly, and we ended up with an ex-Shopify guru actually working as our customer service manager. And then for developers, we posted on Hubstaff and weirdly Ruby on Rails subreddit. Like, let's just do this for a while until we find a place to post it. And we actually, from those 2 free postings, we got so many applicants that we started interviewing and hired 2 people.
Oh, that's great. And Bronwyn, you rely a lot on your network and referrals. So how would a candidate know that you're hiring and what roles you're hiring for?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely use that platforms as well, but we use our social channels pretty consistently. And then I think one of the biggest and most interesting ones is we have paid co-ops. And we do summer interns and things like that. And I taught at Algonquin College, so I get to kind of have the insider scoop of some of the upcoming talent. And that's been really fruitful because we get to have that trial period and kind of get to know their style. And then we get to scoop them up right away. So that's been really great. My art director has been with me for 8 years. She was a co-op, and I had no money. And I found the money to pay for her, and now she's been with me for 8 years. So it was very fruitful. So it was a different approach for that piece.
That's great. And then once candidates come through, so you found them either at a conference or a jobs board or through co-op, how do you know which one is right? Like maybe you can explain a little bit about your selection process, Bronwyn?
You never know they're right. No. I have a 4-tier selection process, and it changes based on what I'm trying to hire for. But the first tier, let's say they've made through the, I've looked at their resume, all of those pieces are aligned. But really it's about their talent, what skills do they bring to the table. So we do testing. So obviously for a designer, we look at their portfolio. For developers, we look at their code. And then for writers, we actually make them do a writing challenge. Writing is actually quite difficult to hire for, to make sure that people can actually string sentences together. So we do that. And then after that, we move to tier 2, which is just a 15-minute meet and greet. It's very short. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I want to essentially just see what your values are, if they're aligned. Kind of what you said, what are your job goals? Is that the same for me? And then tier 3 is much more of a formal interview in terms of situational, behavioral, and technical. And then if they make it through that, 4 is much more a personal and more in-person meet and greet, and whether that be out for coffee or something a little bit more relaxed. And it's an opportunity for them to ask a lot more questions as well. And it's that kind of last, are we a good fit in terms of value? Am I going to bring value to you, and are you going to bring value to me? And that 4-tier process generally works. That being said, sometimes you move forward quicker or you spend more time, but that's generally, I'm going to say, our approach.
And these are in person, correct? Some of these interviews are in person? Okay.
2 of them, one of them was over the phone because I try to keep it quick, and then recently we had Skype because it was for the Ottawa position and they were in Hamilton, and then the final one is always in person, yes, because we don't work as remotely as some of my fellow panelists, so I do like to have that meet and greet in person, for sure.
Great. And Djuro, that's a little bit different for you, eh?
When you choose to have a remote company, you really don't have the luxury of meeting people in person. But we obviously do have an interview process. It's through Skype. And there isn't yet one foolproof method we developed because we haven't hired as many people yet. But one thing we do look, so for developers, let's say, we look at their GitHub and we see if they can do the work, and then obviously we look at, can they work remotely with us? Have they done it before? Or is it just something they're trying to find out, can I work from my home? Like, it should be a good fit of a remote worker. And also we look at their motivation for a job. Just if they're applying and they're already working at another company, we ask, so what's up with that? Like, is there something you want to change there? How come you applied? Stuff like that so far, yeah.
Great. And you're 100% remote?
Well, I'm not sure if we're 100% because the 2 of us co-founders, my co-founder Dom and I, are together in London. Okay. So let's say, yeah.
But all All of your team members you interviewed over Skype, remotely.
Everyone's remote, yeah.
And have you met them ever in person?
Yes. On this Unite, we brought our customer service manager from New Zealand. He's actually a Torontian living in New Zealand, and we brought him, to Unite.
You just met him this
And this
week.
is the first time, yeah. Niagara Falls, we were like first time, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And John, you have some in-person steps to your selection process?
Yeah, we've had to change just because of the volume of resumes we get in candidates. We kind of looked at it more of an acquisition funnel and had to change it that way. One piece of advice I can give is if you've gotten a lot of open recs, invest in automation tools for the hiring process.
Like what?
We started using HireHive recently, which is good. It automatically posts all the jobs to the different boards, so you don't have to worry about maintaining that. It counts the amount of resumes coming in for the individual positions. It allows you to quickly star them and filter them, so you can go back later, make notes. When you're getting, we probably get about 100 resumes a day, so we're not big enough to have a full-time HR manager, so a lot of that falls on us. So anything that can limit that process is great. So we try to use automated questions back and forth, which you can do through one of those tools. And to piggyback on what Bronwyn said, the writing is so important. If we ask you to submit a writing sample before we ever speak with you. Most people are relatively nervous during interviews, so the speaking may not come as fluid as it would. But if you can't string together, a good writing piece when you have all the time in the world, that's something I don't have time to teach you, basically. So it depends where the position is going to be, but we definitely try to do in person if we can. If not, it's video calls, phone calls, but usually we have about 4 touch points before we ever consider hiring someone.
Great. And all of this takes time. Like you've all mentioned different, different practices for your various stages of growth. How much time do you personally spend on this, and is it time well spent?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I'd say probably takes up about 10-15% of my time, and that's of a 100-hour work week, basically. So it's a lot of time. It is time well spent. It's really the future of the company. So if I don't do the hiring process right, jobs are going to get messed up if we don't have the right onboarding. So arguably it's one of the most important 10-15% of my time that I do. So yeah, can't stress it enough. Take the time.
And what about culture? Like a number of you have mentioned how important the various cultures are on your teams. How do you scale culture, whether you're adding one person or many each year? Djuro, do you want to start with remote culture?
Sure.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure, among 5 people scattered around the world, I'm not sure how much I can talk about culture, shared one. But we do share one thing. So out of 5 of us, 4 of us are all expats. And we did end up with this group of curious people, worldly people. And Dom and I, my co-founder and I, we put actually in our contract with them a guarantee for them that they can work from wherever they want, as long as they put in the work. And we will accommodate them as much as we can if they, let's say, want to go to Berlin for a month and work from there. So, because that's what we did. That's what we did when we freelanced for 10 years, and we found it enriched us so much, so we just wanted to allow it for our company as well.
That's really amazing. And with the remote culture, you have to be so intentional about how you communicate and when. So how do you stay connected with your team when you're all in different locations?
So with the ones in Europe, it's easy most of the time, and then we have New Zealand and Bangladesh. And New Zealand is the toughest one because right now we're 13 hours difference. So our meetings are usually the 2 of us in London stay up late, and then when Tom comes online, we have a late night meeting, and we cannot sleep afterwards because we're so excited to see him and to talk. So not enough meetings. Definitely, but then during the winter time, it's a bit easier, and we try to catch up as regular as possible. But it's mostly Slack. It's like any IT company, Slack, Asana for project management. Mm-hmm. It mostly on the screen, it looks the same. Yeah.
That's great. Bronwyn, you've been super intentional about scaling your culture, in particular when you added a second location, a second branch. Can you share a little bit about how you went through that and maybe some mistakes that you made?
For sure. We made many. So when we decided to open a second branch, I call it the year of the mutiny. It was very difficult. It sounds really sexy and exciting, but when you change leadership, when you have different management styles, the culture can shift very quickly. So we had a huge culture shift in the first year, and it was incredibly stressful. And then it was really about how do we kind of take a step back and work on communications between the two offices, because Slack is a very impersonal tool. At the end of the day, you don't have a tone, you don't know what you're asking, at the tone of is it polite, is it rude, at the end of the day. So we had a retreat. We have a retreat every year, and we joined the teams, and we had this massive kind of how are we going to communicate more efficiently, and that
You all get together for
we
this
all
retreat?
we all
Okay.
got together, and we had kind of rules and regulations around how to use Slack, when do we use email, when do we actually use Slack video versus just type. So we have mash outs on Monday, which is everybody together. But I think that was the big game changer. I think every company needs to, or I suggest every company needs to come up with communication rules around the tools that they use. When is an acceptable time to get back to someone? When do you need to have a video? When do you need to pick up the phone? When do you need to? All of these kind of little rules that really set the tone for how people interact. And that's what we did. We sat down and everybody put out all of the things they wanted to start doing, stop doing, and keep doing. And we brainstormed on that as a team, and then we put it all into place. And now our team has rules around communication, but it keeps it less blurry, I think, and more kind, because everybody understands where everybody's coming from.
Yeah, I think the key there is just being really intentional. If you're going to be, a fully remote team, or move from a point of time where everyone was in the same office, where you could just kind of roll over and share context, I think just being intentional about how you communicate and how often is really important. John, you have a really interesting kind of initiative with Wolfpoint that speaks to your culture. Can you share with everyone?
Well, one fun thing that we did to really just, I guess, better the world and be more of a conscious company, but also something that people could adapt to on the team. So there's a wolf conservation center in New York, up in Westchester. So for every employee we bring on, we actually adopt a wolf. So everyone gets to pick their own wolf, and we get the pictures sent to them. It's a fun little thing. We've officially ran New York out of wolves. We're out of wolves to adopt. So if anyone has another conservation society, we're going to need probably another 30 wolves this year. We got to find them. So I'm open to ideas, but we're doing that and sponsoring wildlife events and stuff like that. So good play on the name and join the pack, and people enjoy it. It's small, but it's cool. I like it. And
I love when you said if they don't want to, if they're not into wolves, he's like, we need to maybe back away from this relationship.
It's like, what kind of a sicko are you? Yeah, most people are more excited about it than I thought initially, and the people that are just don't care about it, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I have to look at you again. I don't understand. You might not love wolves, but do you hate animals? We got to take a step back. We need a fifth interview. So I don't know. It's been a cool little thing that it's worked really well.
Yeah, it's something that you probably didn't think about when you were starting your company, but that sets the tone for what, one of the things that you care about and value.
I may have to look into squirrels, really.
Yeah.
Where are they in danger? Where can we save them?
You have such a big pool to work from here.
You're almost everywhere.
I never thought I'd have to be seeking out wolves in my spare time. Oh my God, where are we endangering some wolves here that I can help? So
That's great. Mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in hiring. We've made tons. Maybe you can share biggest mistakes and how you kind of move past those. Bronwyn, do you want to get started?
I have made so many mistakes. I think the biggest mistake that I've made is not breaking up with someone when I should. And I've had mutual breakups. We've kind of said, okay, we need to break up now. But we've also had breakups that I so badly wanted to work. And we've all been there in relationships that we really wanted to work. Maybe we're not giving enough. Maybe we're not providing enough leadership. Maybe we're not giving the right tools. And you're just trying to hold on to that person for their sake. And I read this amazing piece one time, and it said you're actually being super selfish by keeping that person on, because they might thrive somewhere else just because they're not thriving in your ecosystem. And that was a very good lesson for me. I'm still trying to practice it as I speak this. I'm not the best at it still. I tend to know right away when someone's a good fit, and I need to break up with people faster. But I think that is my best advice, is to let someone else go and thrive in their own ecosystem rather than try to force them into yours.
So hire slow and fire fast.
And it's cliche, but it's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Djuro, big
Yeah,
mistakes.
Big mistake. Well, like so many companies, we made a big mistake with our first hire. We weren't as systematic as we should have been with that. We kind of hired on the spot, in the spur of the moment. We didn't interview properly and align their career goals with our own. And but really, in retrospect, what I think was our biggest mistake was not hiring ourselves first. So at the time when we did the first hire, both of us co-founders were only part-time in the company, and I don't think it got enough of our attention, the whole process. So yeah, in retrospect, I would say maybe hire yourself first. You'll know then how much you can do in the company and what is really needed around it when it has your full attention, really, yeah.
Okay, great. So you kind of had to position yourself as the leaders,
Yeah.
How did that work early on?
Yeah, it's a lot of like comfort zone change. You know, you have to stretch yourself a bit in terms of what you do when you have a company. And as we grow our team, you kind of have to look at how you communicate with everyone. And so I was in this kind of designer-developer duo for 10 years, and now suddenly we have other people in, and you have to like make sure you communicate well, they understand you. It's no longer this little bubble you're in, but you have, you know, other people and from different cultures, so we have to like make sure that everything is clear and that, yeah, you communicate well.
Yeah, you were saying that you and Dom, your co-founder, basically were like telepathic, and you had to kind of make a change when a new person joined.
Yeah. So we're a couple in real life as well, you know, life and crime kind of situation. So yeah, we tend to, when we work, it's almost like we don't have to talk as much. Yeah, I do this, he does this. We're good at two separate stuff, and then we combine them. But yeah, when you have more developers on board, and I have to kind of be more systematic in my approach and much more clear. I have to check myself regularly. Yeah,
that's great. John, Wolfpoint, big mistakes.
So I guess the biggest mistake we made initially that I think leads to the best advice here is when you're trying to scale really fast, we had initially put a condition on it that everyone we looked at had to have some form of Shopify experience, which led to some qualified candidates, but a much smaller pool coming in. So what we've actually shifted is we've shifted that to prior agency experience, because we found it's a lot easier to teach Shopify to someone who has previous web development or agency experience than it is to get them ready for like the hustle and bustle of agency life and the crying on the floor all-nighters before launches and everything. So I don't necessarily want to be the first person to teach you how hectic it can be to work at an agency. So I'd much rather spend 2-3 months having you learn everything about Shopify. So at its essence, Shopify is pretty easy to pick up, like Liquid and theme editors and how to set up a store. So that has completely tenfolded our resumes coming in. It made the hiring process go a lot quicker, and people are excited to learn about Shopify, so they're not necessarily excited to learn how hectic it can be to work in an agency. So I think that's the best piece of advice I can give from a mistake we made for a long time.
Yeah, so figuring out what skills or tools or technology you can teach and what qualities that you really need someone to bring to the table kind of inherently.
Really pick your sweet spot, don't put too many restrictions on it. And even when we started posting now, I have, it's a pretty standard practice, but we didn't do it initially, minimum requirements and really desired requirements there.
Cool.
So and I write it usually right in there. If you don't meet these minimum requirements, don't waste my time reading the resume there, because for some reason people still think completely unqualified to meet those. They should still send in their resume. I'm gonna say, all right, you know what? Let's just hire you, even though you were a janitor yesterday or something like that. I think it was a good piece of advice to give people who are hiring fast.
So we're going to turn, after one more question, we're going to turn to the audience. So if you've had a chance to log into the app, you can ask your questions there, and I'll be reading them off of an iPad, I believe. Thank you. But just to close out, I'd love to hear, moving forward, we've had a lot of conversations recently about designing teams and hiring and firing. So what's kind of one thing you want to leave everybody here with respect to how you're planning to move forward and growing your teams? Bronwyn, do you want to get started?
I think that my experience with the change and the big move, the biggest takeaway that I have is that my team is it directly impacts my profit and my margin. And I couldn't believe the year of the mutiny, how low my profits went. It was substantially lower than the previous year. And it was terrifying. And you can blame yourself, you can blame other people, but at the end of the day, I just had the wrong people on the bus. So I had to make huge changes, and thankfully those changes made a huge impact very quickly. So my thing to you is, would you hire the people that you have again? And if you can confidently say, hell yes, then you need to keep them. But if you're kind of like, well, you probably need to break up, and your margins will go, it will change your profitability overnight. When people want to work for you, when they love the job, it just changes that bottom line. And I saw it. The data is there. It wasn't just me thinking about it. It's there. So I think that's my best advice for sure.
It's amazing. Djuro, do you have anything to add?
Well, my advice would go out to all the 1, 2, 3 people operations, all the bootstrapped teams, all the small ones who are kind of overwhelmed with this gorgeous company and what's happening around Shopify. Is that you can definitely stay small and take your time, take your pace. You don't have to go too deep into uncomfortable zones for yourself because you can come as you are, and you don't have to develop too fast. You don't have to hire too fast. Just take your time. Especially for apps, have a good service, have amazing customer support, and you can grow from there in your own pace. Yeah.
Great.
And I'm going to make a really cheesy Shopify plug right now,
great.
and I've clearly drank the Kool-Aid, but trust in kind of the Shopify ecosystem and use all the tools at your disposal. Your partner manager, and I have to embarrass and shout out Matt King here right in front, my partner manager, but also all the meetups, the Unites, come to this, take advantage of it. Like I was saying with the Shopify experts page, it's not where I expected to get resumes through, but surprising source there. And there's more than you expect as far from support, and you'll get out of it what you make it. So use every bit of it.
That is a great segue into our first question from the audience. And I'm going to pass it to you, John. So what recommendations do you have for a smaller agency who are actually competing with a company like Shopify for talent? You've actually maybe experienced this in the past.
Yeah, so there's I think direct competition. I mean we've it's location based, I think. So luckily we are looking for talent in an area where Shopify may not. So New York, the States, and a lot of different places. But it is a tough pool to go for it, and I think the best piece of advice I can say is you're not going to win every battle, so particularly against a giant corporation that can give a lot of benefits. So try to find people that want that hustle, something new every day, that challenge of working at a startup, rather than someone who's looking for the massive security and perks that come with a company the size of Shopify.
Yeah.
John, something you said when we were talking that I thought was really interesting, that sometimes you get Shopify people that have been working at Shopify and have been very successful at Shopify, but then are looking for a change of pace in the agency world. They have all this experience with Shopify, and then they now want to try their hand at a more full project that's going to be, and that sometimes those are really fruitful relationships for you. I remember you saying that. Yeah,
they can really work out. And the big difference, I think the big change people are looking for coming from a big company is they want their roles to change every day, which I wouldn't necessarily call a positive of agency life, but it is like a true factor there. So if you want to solve a new problem every day, if you want the unexpected each day, then that is something we can deliver to you, like it or not. For better or worse, that's what you'll get working for an agency. So
yeah, and I see us sharing talent all the time. Like we have lots of candidates that come our way who, based on their motivations or their interests, we share information about our partner ecosystem, and we've had lots of candidates and employees, past employees, work for our partners. And I love that. Like, I think it's amazing to keep amazing talent within our ecosystem. So one of the questions that came up was around motivation. So, companies who are able to pay great salaries and provide equity. What are some ways that you compete with larger companies who are able to maybe pay a little bit more? Djuro, do you have an example there?
Yeah, but what comes to mind is just that we offer this freedom of kind of location-independent lifestyle that you can have with us. So I think that would be the biggest draw, as opposed to big companies who usually tend to have a headquarter thing going on. Yeah, I think that would be our one.
That's great. No,
yeah,
it's great.
ace.
And what are your best practices on evaluating employees' performance and keeping the bar high? So once they're here, how are you actually ensuring that they continue to grow and maintain or raise the bar?
Yeah, I can answer at least what we do. So we time track everything, but less so for me to be checking in on my staff and more just to see how long things actually take. So we do that, which helps in terms of just levels of performance. But I have a great team, so I don't really need to worry about that as much now. But I think that for performance, we do monthly kind of check-ins in terms of what did they do this month that went above and beyond. And I feel really lucky that my team do go that above and beyond. And I think that constant, are you just doing your job, or are you going that kind of that extra, that piece? Like, did you make a client happy? Did you? And I love when I get those emails, and I constantly get emails. I think that's one of the differentiating factors from a large company. My staff get to work directly with my clients, and our clients love that. So they get to that people interaction, and I often get emails that said, God, your team did a really great job, or so-and-so did this. Those are like the best, things that I could ever have. But yeah, for performance, we do the time tracking and then the monthly check-ins as well as our evaluations. But generally, it's that going above and beyond. And we thank our clients all the time, and it's my staff that say, can we please thank this client this week? And yeah, so it's all about passion for me.
Great. This has come up a couple times here, but when is it practical to involve a recruiter? So like a staffing firm or external agency, they cost a pretty penny, this person is saying, which is true. So I know, Bronwyn, you have an experience with a staffing firm.
I do. I've tried it 3 times, all of which were not successful for me personally. They just didn't understand our culture. They were looking to find a fit and do it quickly. And that for me wasn't what we were looking for at all. And we have people call all the time, especially creative. We have creative group of people. It's never been great for me. They don't get cinnamon toast. They get recruiting, but they don't get cinnamon toast. And we get cinnamon toast. So I find that for us personally, it has been a big old waste of money.
And
sorry if there's recruiters in the room.
No. I mean, I'm an internal recruiter. I have a team.
But you're internal.
Yeah. So I think when you hit a certain size, and there was another question here. When's the right time to maybe bring that skill set into your team? And for us, it was at about 85 employees. But still, our leadership team is so involved. Like, a hiring team needs to be totally partnered with the leadership team, with the hiring manager. So, like, you're a founder, you're a leader, you're going to be doing recruiting for a very long time. And I think, just like John said, it's a very good use of your time. There's one other question on remote. So you've never met some of your team face to face.
No.
Have you ever had an experience where maybe you were shocked when you actually met them face to face, or how have you evaluated people kind of like accurately or inaccurately
After
online?
I met, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so we only met Tom right now in person, but frankly, through Skype and through chatting so much, you kind of meet the person.
Yeah.
And if you're empathic, and if you're both empathic, I think even Skype meeting can really bring you that person, bring you inside you online, if that makes sense. I don't think that, I'm not saying it's overrated to meet someone in person, but you won't miss some big, discord between your personalities and will they fit or not in company through Skype meeting. Like,
yeah.
it's mostly there. It's still a conversation. It's only you have a big of a buffer, let's say, between you, which is sometimes good.
Have you ever had to scale back, so let people go based on your growth? And did you worry what would happen if you ever needed to grow again?
No,
No.
I'm not the right
Yeah.
person to speak
Bronwyn.
to this.
Yeah, for
Only
sure. I
forward.
have. I'm very careful not to put all my eggs in one basket in terms of clients. That's something that I've seen agencies do. They get one big client and they put everything into it, and then that client is no longer there, and all of a sudden you're firing a large crowd of people. Thankfully, I've never had that, but I did have the leadership problem when we did the move. So I had to let 5 people go all at once, between them leaving and me letting them go, and it was incredibly difficult. And you think, how am I going to survive this? How am I going to, manage this? But interestingly enough, when those people aren't the right people, all of a sudden things actually go smoother, right? So we've certainly downscaled and then gone back up. But that's really the only time. It wasn't because of putting all my eggs in one basket. It was mostly that I just had the wrong people on my bus. And then thankfully now it's gone back up, but I've been able to hire way less people because they're performing at the levels in which I need them to do. So, I have one person that's doing a job of 3, and yes, she's very busy, but she's managing it, and whereas I was paying 3 employees to do that prior. So it was good scale back. And I think that that's something we forget, that sometimes scaling back is a good thing because you're maximizing your performance of your current employees.
That's really amazing. I think sometimes we rely too much on hiring to solve a problem rather than looking kind of holistically at your team's design.
Or that equals success. I mean, hiring people doesn't necessarily equal success. It's how to maximize your team.
Yeah. Okay, last question, and I'd love for each of you to answer, and then we'll wrap up for the break. What does the future of work look like? How do you see employees' needs and desires changing in the coming years? Let's start with John.
In the coming years, I think one thing that we're doing is kind of restructuring the positions from what we originally thought they were and the expectations of it. I want to give people the opportunity to change positions if they want, and we've got a process internally of bringing that to us. I just really want to avoid employees feeling like they're stuck or stagnant because some of these positions don't really have something above it. There isn't necessarily something where I can promote you to a position above it because you're right below me. So I think that's something that I really want to institute is kind of this horizontal path and change way and give people the opportunity if they start in one role to move to another. Like, if you want to move from a support position to a front end, I'll give you a shot. We can do an internal kind of test, and I'm always willing to help educate and boot camp, anything. If you find some courses you want to take, that's a big push for me that, I want you to be able to grow here and not feel like your only option is to leave or ask for more money and kind of feel stuck.
Yeah, Djuro.
I can only speak through remote company angle because I also only worked remotely. But similar to what you just said at the end, I think remote companies will definitely are learning to invest more in people, send them to more education, and also work on culture. That everyone's more aware of how culture is important. So having more meetings in person, like having retreats, stuff like that. What Bronwyn was talking about. I think that this will go more into the remote company sphere more than it was before, because it used to be just like, let's have people all over the world. We don't have to worry about them. It's coming more together. It's more important now, I think. Yeah.
That's great. Bronwyn?
I think what I'm seeing more and more is people want flexibility. There was a time that everybody worked a certain day shift in a certain time frame, and you were responsible for getting your doctor's appointments and picking up your children and all of those things, and that shouldn't in fact impact your work. And now I'm seeing that's just not realistic. We need to kind of mesh that work-life piece, and everybody says keep them separately, and I'm seeing that less and less. Right? We need to figure out how to make our life a part of our work, and being flexible and knowing that at the end of the day, as long as the work is done and our clients are happy, and it's contingent on that, but at the end of the day, then yeah, go have your hair cut, go get your nails done, go get see the doctor, go as long as our work is done and our clients are happy. So I think that that's a big piece, that how to mesh work life. And I have a young team that are a lot of females, and soon they're going to be having babies. And for me, it's thinking, do we have an internal daycare system? How do we make sure that we provide for our staff so that CT is a part of their family and their life, not separated? And I really see that as a huge change as I'm hiring.
Yeah, and maybe I can close out with my answer on that one as well. I think the future of work is incredibly exciting. We've moved into kind of a world where the work that you do is meaningful. The work that you do is something that you're passionate about, whether it's a company with values that you align with and a mission you align with, or starting your own business, whether it's a SaaS company or an agency or a small business. I think that people are now going to be able to select and spend their time on doing things that is meaningful to them, and I think that's great. And through, technology, we'll be able to, have people working wherever they want, kind of whenever they want, and doing their best work at the right time. Now, there were a lot of questions, so we're going to be sticking around out here. There's a break. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists, John, Djuro, and Bronwyn. And enjoy the rest of the day at Unite. Thank you.